Welcome to episode 93 of Rabbit Hole, and this episode is called A Quieter Earth.
Welcome everyone, and as Carl said, this is episode 93, A Quieter Earth.
Yeah.
But before that, please like, subscribe, all the classic things to say.
Yeah, we've got a video channel on YouTube, Rabbit Hole Origins.
Yes, if you are listening to audio, just go fasting over there.
And if you haven't got time to watch, then just listen.
Of course. So, here's the episode.
Cool.
Society.
New segment about society.
Oof.
Or related to society. What are we talking about today is human population. And how for the past 2 centuries has been climbing, has been
exponential almost, right?
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
But there are some very interesting studies and being conducted and predictions in a way.
Kind of consequences of what is happening.
Yes.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So, now, we are just growing so fast in our population that we're going to reach a point in which resources...
We're going to run out of room, right?
And space...
And resources first.
Yes.
That's if we don't screw the entire biosphere before all of that. Well, it can't continue, can it?
Yes. But there's a very interesting prediction here.
Well, it's a
statistical
it's a
prediction.
phenomena. Because it is happening.
Yes.
Right?
And normally you would think, well, first of all, in which years are the limits? There have been somebody who was the United Nations saying that the 2080, in the 2080s, we will reach
peak population.
In the US, they are saying in the 2060s.
Yeah, so it's 2080s to 2060s.
In that range.
It could be 2090s, it could be 2100. But it's...
Could be even faster.
Well, it could be. Yeah. Depends how you want to get there. There's plenty of options, right? But the thing about it is what is driving it. And what is driving it is lower birth rates.
Yes.
That is the driver, right? So for let's just take a country, it has a population, citizens, made up of men and women. And the problem is that there is a replacement level, which is 2.1 children per average woman, right? And the problem is that ain't happening, right? And it isn't happening not just in one place, but in most places. So, generally speaking, in advanced economies, generally speaking. So, for example, Europe, the US, China, Japan is a good worst case example. Basically, what is happening is that the birth rates have dropped, and also in East Asia, obviously, Latin America, same thing. So what appears to happen is there's a pattern that as an economy develops and as their societies, shall we say, evolve. For example, a major factor is women's education. So as women become more educated, then clearly they choose to pursue careers, and obviously it gives them agency, gives them independence. It doesn't mean they don't get married and have children, but they'll delay having children. And if both parents are working, because unfortunately the way our economic structures are, we've gravitated to a point where in a lot of developed countries, nations, it requires both parents to work to have an acceptable standard of living.
And I think that's exactly the key word for all this. How the economics in the world are moving and driving.
People.
Because in the end, if you think about, 200 years ago or something like that, probably the economic situation was not really the most important, in the sense that your life is not really guided by it.
There was nothing you could buy anyway, right? Other than food, candles.
Now you have to think about all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Phones, plans, streaming services,
utilities.
YouTube without ads.
Mortgages.
Yeah.
Blah, 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 right?
So the point here also is that as you have more children, the more expensive it becomes.
Super expensive.
So the fact that both parents have to work to have a household income sufficient to live, and then you add that a human being, a small child, then it becomes, and children's clothes and all related to children is more expensive than for adults.
It's incredibly expensive.
So I think that education is a very important part of how birth rate has been reduced. But the economics and the fact that it's super expensive now to have a child, imagine having 3, 4, it becomes nearly impossible and end up in really bad social situations probably.
But it's not, do you not think that it's not specifically that raising a child is expensive, which it is? It's because living is expensive. Full stop.
Full stop, yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
Everything's become more expensive, not just recently, because we know, there's been a spike in inflation around the globe, but that this has been a trend. Remember that in advanced economies, central banks set deliberate policies for inflation. They don't try to drive inflation out of their economies. This is true in all advanced economies. They set a level, and the normal level is 2%. They aim for a 2% inflation rate. Why do they do that? One, unfortunately, they set it because it erodes the value of people's savings. So it encourages people to spend, right?
Yes.
Because if they keep the money, it's just lowering in value. So let's crystallize the value in something, right?
And this affecting, in the case of the topic of peaking population, is the fact that there's no more kids. The birth rate dropped.
Yeah.
And it's something that we were mentioning, that we're going to reach a peak, but that peak doesn't mean that we will stabilize and continue. It's basically going to come a big
cliff edge
drop. And we can see now in the screen this graph where they kind of show how they expect that drop to be. And it's like
because where we
bungee
are
jump
there on the curve going up, we're on the steep curve, right? And then we peak, and then the multiple lines flowing out from there
possible
are various scenarios. Yeah, and of all the various scenarios, none of them look that great.
Well, there's only one that it's less steep.
Yeah, that's
just
right.
A little less steep.
Yeah, and if you look at the beginning of the chart, that is what age band is that at the beginning?
It's 1000 BC.
1000 BC, which is like 3,000 years ago, right?
Which is 110 million people.
Yeah. And then if you look at that level and draw it across to the right, you think
we are under that.
Right.
Yes.
Anyway, the data is saying that in 200 or 300 years' time, we could be on the right-hand side of that chart.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting for me is obviously there's a lot of assumptions being made. Obviously, it makes a very dramatic graph, which I love, and obviously it's very fascinating. But what I wonder is what the impacts might be.
Yeah.
And what occurred to me was that we're on this upward curve, so clearly we are approaching a peak within 60 years,
Mm-hmm.
a peak of maximum stress, right? That is on resources, pressures within societies, competition for resources.
Yeah.
And I hate to be a downer, but it strikes me as that we're potentially living through the most dangerous period in history.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, and I know I'm old, right? But to me, this is a warning,
Mm-hmm.
this graph. Because it says to me, if anything's going to kick off, this is the period it's going to kick off.
Yeah.
Because once we're over that peak, it's a whole different story, right?
Yeah. We're going to reach a point in which we are going to be,
Well,
really...
really pushed, right?
Yes, a kind of a post-apocalyptic in a way.
Well, the thing about 60 years is not that long. It's like max 2 generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Max, right? So what happens to various things, various situations
Mm-hmm.
that we're in currently based on our current population levels? So I thought of a few, which was, if we look at the US, for example, they like to criticize other cultures for living in the 15th century, but they're doing a pretty good job of getting back to the 15th century with their abortion shenanigans that they're doing over there, with restricting women's autonomy, which, don't even get me started on it because it does my head in. But, of course, you could imagine governments, certain kinds of governments, going all out on restricting birth control.
Yeah.
Because they actually want more citizens, right? So I don't think we've seen the end of the rollback of reproductive rights. It may become a government tool, certain kinds of government.
Yeah, there was a movie, about that. There's always a movie, of course.
Well, I don't even know why you said that.
When they were granting you...
Isn't that The Handmaid's... No,
there's many, actually.
Yeah, there's many.
There
are many.
A chance to reproduce, basically. It was more under control.
Where certain people were banging them out,
mm-hmm.
and other people weren't allowed to because they weren't worthy or whatever. All kinds of usual... Or
plots.
Or America, as I call it. Sorry,
Possible.
Americans. It is your fault, not ours. Anyway, so I think one of the impacts will be increasing reproductive freedoms being reduced.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is governments depend on taxes. Contrary to what some people apparently think, governments actually don't have any money. They just have money they confiscate off you, right?
True that.
But they call it taxes, but it is your money, right? So governments can only spend money, usually badly, that they've robbed off us, right?
And if there's no more population or is in decline, then there's no money.
Well, if the working population is in decline, where's the money going to come from?
Yeah.
Right? So, again, what we're looking at is changing demographics. So, obviously, I think, for example, by 2030, and I'm old already, and I feel the last 30 years went by in about 2 months. That's what it seems like. So I'll feel like 2030 is maybe the end of this week. I don't know. But 2030 is not that far away. And apparently by 2030, in the UK, there'll be more people over the age of 65 than under 25. Now, here's the thing, that those people over 65 who are potentially retirees
yeah.
They get, this is the system in the UK, but I'm sure these kinds of things are repeated elsewhere. They get pensions, right?
Yeah.
ostensibly for working for 50 years or whatever it is. But those pensions are actually paid out of real-time earnings.
Yes.
It's not a big bank account that they've saved money in.
Well, yeah.
So if the tax base of taxable working people is dropping and there are more old people, where are their pensions coming from?
It's simple.
Kill them all?
No.
Introduce a virus that kills old people? Oh, no, we've done
No.
that. Sorry.
Reintroduce child labor.
I thought you were going to say
Because-
old people.
No. I read exactly something like that about happening also again in the US,
I'm thinking Soylent Green myself, but carry on.
but in which more companies would
Oh,
start
employing
to
underage children.
underage
Right?
children.
Well, they're like 13 or something, and they're
13,
working in
15.
abattoirs or something.
So that's already,
America,
A symptom
yet
of-
again, you're leading the way. Well done.
if governments need more workers,
Yeah.
then they could lower the law of until the limit age of that you can start to work, for example. So they would get and replace the people that are not.
How
working alone.
about using, like babies, they could be rented out as hot water bottles for old people. So that they could wrap them up in something quite light and the old people could rest their feet on them. I mean, anybody could do that. You don't need to learn any skills.
Okay, that was pretty dark.
Well, another idea I had was old people, right? What are they good for?
Yeah.
Right? I'm an old person. You know what I'm like. Every day Sunday. The thing is, old people, why don't they? Can you imagine moving to a scheme where every year old people, come December, every old person above a certain age has to justify why they should live beyond the 31st of December.
That sounds like another movie.
That should be a movie.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say Soylent Green again, but whatever. But do you really want Soylent Green made out of old people? It's just going to taste past its sell-by date, isn't it? I mean, come on. I mean, although it wouldn't need a lot of chewing, and I think that'd be the important thing.
Yeah.
So just to finish up on a serious note, what happens to the value of property?
It just falls. Nothing is worth anymore.
Who's going to buy them?
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is that banks, we all know that banks look ahead, right? This is why banks put up mortgage interest rates above the national bank rate, because they're not looking at today, they're looking at 12 and 18 months ahead, and that's why they put rates up, because they can see what's happening. And this is also why they ask you to make a bigger deposit to buy a house, because they know that probably house values are going to drop in the future, so they need you to take more of the risk, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't want to take any risk, or literally none.
None. Zero.
So banks do look well into the future. I am not able to convince myself that banks are not already thinking about this. Surely, they must. It's not that far away.
Yeah, definitely.
So
What do you think? Population?
So that's our cheery
Declining.
message for the future.
Mm-hmm. What would you do to change the outcome,
Yeah.
for example? That's a good question, I think, for the viewers.
And you can't say Soylent Green because we've said it. I've said it at least 3 times.
Yes.
Yeah. And the hot water bottle idea is mine.
There you go. Let us know what you think about Carl's new investment company,
innovative thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Next.
Yes, so pretty interesting stuff, right? I mean, you and I will probably be long gone by the time this really impacts.
Yeah, there's a really an impact on the population number, but
well, certainly in the next 60 years is when, well, after about 60 years it is when it will properly peak.
Yes.
And then the shocking thing, which we've seen from the graph, is the downside.
Yes,
How
the decline
rapid it is.
It's going to be. It's worse than.
Well, it's like in the main part of the program we said population has increased from 2 to 8 billion in 200 years.
Yeah.
And it's actually going to drop back to that in another 200 years, which is quite bizarre.
Yes.
Anyway.
We're going to be reaching a point in which we need to see what can we do to still, as a species,
to survive society-wise.
Society-wise, of course.
Because all our societies are structured around stable or growing populations because they generate tax revenues. So if those tax revenues are falling away, it's going to be serious impacts on
for sure.
societies, right?
So what do you think about the topic? Do you have any input that you would like to share with us? Please do it in the comments, and we can actually talk about it in another episode and discuss your comments. So go ahead, comment.
And subscribe, right?
Yes, subscribe, like it, share it with whoever you think that would like our episodes, and
keep listening and watching.
My name is Rafael Ruiz.
I'm Carl Baldwin.
See you next time.